Okay, welcome everyone to the Jupyter team meeting, December 12th, 2017. And we have a number of people joining us. Unfortunately, Anna couldn't make it, so we are recording without her. Thanks for the information, Anna, about how to do that. And I lost my paper link.
Let me, I'll paste it in here.
Thanks. So I don't know of any announcements. Anybody have any announcements before we start, before we go into?
I spoke last night at the Data Venice or Data LA event, and I presented about Jupyter Lab, or the history of Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab, and people were really stoked on it. I'd say about only 5 or 10 people out of the 50 people were aware of Jupyter Lab. Mm-hmm. And then after seeing the demo, they were really impressed. A lot of people were saying like, wow, I mean, I can't believe how far you guys have come in the past couple of years. And so that's cool.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like, is Jessica online? Okay, Grant, you're up for Notebook.
Okay, so we have a lot of issues marked for 5.3, but one of the recent PRs that adds terminal support for Windows was merged, and people are requesting that we do a release to get that out there. So I'm thinking about doing a 5.3 release this week, just to allow people to start using that feature, and then we can push a lot of the other things to 5.4 or maybe a patch release. So as long as there's not any objections there, I'll plan on doing that. Additionally, there is an issue, an older issue, and a lot of discussion around templates for notebooks. So the idea being that someone can create a notebook template, with certain format or layout, or like a template. I don't know how else to describe it, but basically adding a feature within the notebook to create a new notebook based on a template. And then Brian chimed in and was saying that why not provide that same functionality for any type of file. So I just wanted to see if there's if anyone here has any opinions about that, about how to, or it's just any. I think my next step would be to create a little proposal, enhancement proposal. But does anyone have any ideas or thoughts about that right now?
By template, you just mean that forking a file, not having templated variables, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there is 2 different use cases. So I want to think about clearly is basically you have one file with a different extension in a specific folder, and when you click on it, it forks in the same folder. And the otherwise would be system-wide. Here is like a place where you put a lot of files that are templates, and when you do like new notebook or new whatever, you basically can choose such a file. I don't know if we can merge the 2 in a single API or system.
Mm-hmm. The number 2 sounds, I mean, I can picture that. That one makes sense to me. The first one, can you explain that again?
So basically, the first one is the equivalent of opening a file and doing file, save as a copy, and opening the copy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically a, do you want templates to be easy for people to, hey, this is a template file, or is it something more complex, which is, hey, I'm going to expose a type of file that pre-populate my workflow.
Yes.
There are slightly different, and I can see people wanting both. So yeah, was just
Well, so number one are you describing something that is possible already? Where you have a notebook open and you just say like duplicate or save as copy.
I mean, I think we already have it in the file menu, which is not often used. But the question is like, you probably want to make templates read-only unless you have a specific action from the user. It's a question of, so it may be something which is purely a UI question. Like on lab, I can perfectly see like right click and open a copy or something like that.
Yeah. I think if we were to add this type of feature, I think number two, I think that makes sense. You basically have a directory where you can keep these templates, and then when you do new, maybe it has in Jupyter Lab, you have like new notebook or console, etc. But then there can maybe be a separate section where here's your templates. So okay, that's good. I like that. I'll include that in the proposal. Does anyone else have any other suggestions, ideas?
As you're thinking, go ahead.
Go for it.
As you're are you thinking about this primarily from us distributing these, or are you thinking this primarily as other people writing them for themselves and only themselves, or other people writing them and then having some means of distributing them for others, like we do with NBConvert templates?
I think primarily number two. I'm sure number three might emerge as a result, but it sounds like from all the discussion, people have their own needs for templates. And the most common use case is I'm a instructor or professor, and I want to create templates for students to use, something like that. So that would be, I guess, number two and number three.
Wait, if they're creating templates for students to use, then they would need to distribute those to the students. That would actually be
that'd be number three too. Yeah.
I was going to say, in the Jupyter Lab context, I can imagine an extension whose settings you can pretty trivially set to, say, a path to a folder or a zip file or something, and it just you have some sort of well-defined thing in your JSON schema that says this is how you add new to the new templates menu. So it'll be just a new template extension, and its settings will be how that menu gets populated, and it gives users the ability to add new things with varying degrees of sort of UI sugar, right? The first version could just be you do it through the setting editor. The second version could have its own UI where you just but yeah, we can. I think there's a lot of ways of making this different levels of technically difficult or nice to use, and we can start at one point and just iterate on it.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, so it should be an extension, third-party extension initially, and then if if it becomes really widely used, then that's something we can consider packaging in core. Then yeah, I like what you're saying about being able to customize it using the settings, the Jupyter Lab settings that we have now. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think when this has been talked about before, this is basically what Em was talking about, is that people have talked about package authors being able to distribute like example notebooks as something that you can open. So if the places where we look for files include something in in the usual paths, then I think that case is pretty well covered.
And we have the capability of, when you write your extension, there are required imports and there are optional ones. So you could create an export from this new template extension that other authors optionally import, and if it exists, they add a new template to the menu, and if it doesn't exist, it doesn't matter. so that other people can sort of opt into using that functionality as well.
Okay, so when you say imports and exports in this context, what does that mean exactly?
So for example, suppose let's by analogy pretend that the functionality you're describing is actually a command palette, right? Mm-hmm. And you have an extension that you're writing, and your extension lets you add some commands to a command palette. What you can do is, as the author of the extension, you have a requires field, which is an array of tokens that you want, and then you have an optional one. And that also gets imported if it exists. So you'll say, oh, if an iCommand palette showed up, then add my commands. If not, don't bother doing it. Similarly, if an iTemplate manager shows up, okay, use that to add some new templates. If not, don't worry about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and Min, what you're saying is that extensions can potentially provide their own notebook examples, and this is sort of the same thing as a template?
Yeah, and it should basically just be a directory that in this template provider, you should need to write an extension to provide some templates. You should just be able to put some files in a location.
I see. Okay. And what do you think, or where do you think that location should be?
Probably, the usual prefixes, share, Jupyter templates, or we should be careful with the name templates since we use that for HTML files, but share Jupyter or something.
Share Jupyter. Okay.
User templates, yeah.
Well, but you can't do user templates either, because they're also, I've been talking for a long time about actually having a direct way to distribute NB convert templates too. And so then there would be a name conflict there unless we wanted to do some like file munging to make sure which ones.
Well, I mean, I think then it would be inside NB convert / everybody else is like NB convert / or lab / whatever, NB convert / whatever. It may be a high level project.
These can be called grant templates because they're Grant's idea, so they'll be grant templates.
Not my idea.
He'll write all your grant proposals. It'll be awesome. It's great.
Yeah, potentially we could put this under Jupyter Lab or something, even though it's not typed. Maybe not.
Once you have a directory for it as well, thinking about like the GitHub extension in Jupyter Lab, we could even just have a template file browser over on the side, and it automatically makes a copy into your current directory for your default file browser. And that way you can browse directories.
So this is it's not a contents manager function. This is not something you manage for any backend.
You could have it as a contents manager that a new file browser is hooked up to.
Yeah, I guess the one implementation question is whether this is a purely front-end thing that populates files. I mean, not necessarily front-end, but a consumer of the contents API, whether it's Python or REST that puts files in there when you open it, or if it's a contents manager extension feature itself, it would certainly be.
If you're putting it in the user prefix and you don't want it to depend on where people are starting up the notebook server, then you'll have to have some backend because of or some change to the contents manager that's.
It would need to be a server extension that's looking for the files.
Yeah.
But the question is whether it becomes like a right. So I think the contents API has a copy from or something argument.
Should we maybe move all of this nitty-gritty detail to its own discussion somewhere?
We're getting into the weeds.
But that's another axis of discussion, I guess, is where exactly the extension happens.
So the link to this issue is in the paper. So feel free to comment there. And I'll start this proposal and I'll link to it. Issue. Or it's
great.
Okay, let's see. As for notebook, I think that's it. Let me just take one last look. Yeah, that's it for notebook.
Great. Jupyter Lab? Darian?
Yeah, so we have been going through all of the issues in GitHub that are tagged with the beta milestone in preparation for the release candidate for beta, which is coming in 2 weeks time, I guess. Jupyter Lab Launcher 0.7 has been released, and that makes the way that the different handlers know where to get their contents standardized, so configuration is really simplified there. And it also takes MathJax out of the launcher, and it lets us handle that with a front-end extension instead, which is just a lot cleaner. I've linked to the beta release plan in case anyone is not aware of where we're headed. But basically, the idea is that right before Christmas, like the last week that everyone's working, is when we want to have the beta release candidate out, and then right after we come back after New Year's is when that release candidate will be promoted to actual beta. There's been more work done on the menu system that we've been talking about the past couple of weeks. There's a lot of UX work happening on the West Coast with Bloomberg and Ian and lots of other people who might have more things to say about it than I do. But if not, that's it.
Yeah, Ian and I and some of the Bloomberg UX folks and Brian have been working on through the menu structure and iterating a lot, and we still have a lot of iteration this week to do. So hopefully in maybe the next release of Jupyter Lab, we'll see an updated menu structure. Jupyter widgets, we released 7.1 RC release candidate. We hope to release 7.1 this week. The reason we're bumping up to 7.1 is because we've added some attributes to different widgets and to maintain sort of a Semver type compatibility with widget model specs. We're bumping up to 7.1, so that should happen this week. NB convert, M?
It's been a little bit, and so I don't remember all of the things that have happened since last I talked about NB convert. But most recently, there's been a bug about MathJax block parsing, and that is now merged and fixed. So no longer will Markdown block parsing interfere with MathJax parsing. That's basically it for right now.
Great, thanks. Peter, services? Is Peter on? I don't see him on. Anybody else?
I put a note in there. JumpinB had a bit of an issue and needed to be restarted. I'm not sure if there's anybody other than me who knows how to do that, so that should probably be something we should fix. It's currently full again, so I just started launching another instance when I entered that note. So it's seeing a bit of increased traffic right now, so we might want to investigate that. But JumpinB is basically the same as the goals of JumpinB are basically the same as the new binder, just without the ability to choose images. So we should probably consider either replacing JumpinB with just a link to binder with a specified repo to play with, or change the JumpinB deployment to be basically something, the JumpinB application to be something very similar to the binder deployment, which is much easier to manage than JumpinB.
What would the downside of just redirecting to binder itself to that standard repo?
The main thing is, so there kind of isn't one. The main thing is that it's a the relationship of the projects and whether we should be relying on whether we should be leaning on binders hosting costs with the JumpinB traffic, which currently gets actually significantly more traffic than binder. Believe it or not, it has about Not a lot, but a couple hundred people using it right now. And also,
okay. That's reasonable.
Since it's an image specifically for demoing all the kinds of stuff you can do, which we may want to reconsider. The image we launch is like 12 gigs, which is very slow on Binder, but not slow on JumpinB because we pre-populate everything. But it might, just from maintenance perspective, we might try just pointing try.jupyter at my binder and potentially shutting down jumpinb.org. I'm not sure. Something to consider.
So I'm totally cool shutting down JumpinB. I think most of what kept us on there was that it was working, and we have free hosting for it, which made it easier. But then maintaining that free hosting is different than maintaining Binder. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
redirecting to my Binder, even if it's a little bit slower. So,
it'll work because I've seen a lot of people saying that Jupyter just is not working. I mean, it'll work for a couple of minutes and then it'll disconnect from the back end, or something will happen and it just doesn't work anymore. So I think it's important that try.jupyter works.
Yeah, I agree. And it just, because right now it's got Haskell and Julia and R and Python and everything installed with a bunch of stuff.
And I think each of those languages that wants to feature something, like that was originally the only place they could feature stuff.
Yeah.
Now they can make a binder specifically for their setup. And we can make try.jupyter be like only a Python 3 kernel and only with some basics. I think that'd be fine.
Yeah, and we can have actually links to other binders.
Yeah.
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 Like, oh, you want to try something else? Go over here. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go.
That'd be a really nice way to surface all of the binder examples too. Like all of the different things that may not even be covered in terms of kernel identity. But
yeah, good point.
All right, and going into Jupyter Hub, Carol or Men, whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, we've just, a lot of us have been traveling and it's been crazy busy, but stuff with Binder is going well. Min's been working on some enhancements on Jupyter Hub as well. We've got some work happening on sort of the virtual meeting structure that we're trying to do. And Andrea Zonka at San Diego Supercomputer Center made a nice handy web page so folks can discover the different Helm charts a little easier. And over time that may get migrated, but for now it's a big improvement over what we had. And congrats to UV for his KubeCon talk, and also for bringing back a whole bunch of great resources related to security and other things from the conference. And Min, do you got other stuff?
I think that covers it pretty well. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Jupyter Client.
So there's a couple of PRs on Jupyter Client that I've highlighted in the notes. One of them is a relatively simple one that I started a long time ago and forgot about, and I've just come back to it. So that would add a Jupyter kernel command to run a kernel without an attached front end, which is something that somebody requested on a mailing list recently. And the other one is a much more involved one, trying to better separate some of the APIs of Jupyter Client. So if people want to have a look at those.
Great, thank you. Any other sub-projects that need to say something? All right. It looks like in the conferences and workshops, we have a list of conferences and workshops. I'll highlight two of them that maybe you may want to do something about. You may want to go to Widgets Workshop, January 23rd through 26th. Contact Sylvain Corley if you'd like to go. It's in Paris, or just outside of Paris. And it looks like the PyCon 2018 still has an open CFP. Is that still open? Okay. So that's something you could also act on. And then there's a list of other, it looks like Carol's giving several keynotes and other conferences listed. So please list, if you know of any other conferences that you're going to talking about Jupyter and things like that, or conferences that people in the Jupyter organization would be interested in going to or knowing about, please list them in the notes. It looks like we have, of course, JupyterCon coming up in August. If you want to give some comments on the CFP draft, let Fernando or Brian know. And we had Jupyter Lab 0.30 released and IPyKernel 4.7 released, and Helm Chart 0.5 to be released soon. I guess I'll add IPyWidget 7.1. Is there anything else? All right, so we'll say goodbye, Internet.